So today I want to talk to you about two very important concepts: cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism is the belief that one's own culture is superior to all others. This is viewing the rest of the world through a narrow lens of one's own cultural perspectives. Cultural relativism is this notion that any part of the culture, such as an idea or behavior pattern, must be viewed in its proper cultural context, rather than from the viewpoint of the observer's culture. And this is very important because as we study societies, we want to be able to understand a culture on its own terms and not through the lens of our own experience. So if you look at this first image, you see a woman wearing what is called a hijab. Now, hijab in Islam is the garment that women wear on their head. There are variations on this. The niqab is one other that covers also the woman's face. Now, if you see this, you may have a certain preconception about what the hijab means. You may think that this woman is a victim of a male-dominated society, or that she's a participant in some backwards-looking ideology. Some might think that she's forced to wear the hijab, when it's more likely that this woman chooses to wear the hijab as a symbol of her devotion to God. And, we have precedents for this. We understand that certain women in our culture, nuns for instance, wear a head covering to show their devotion to God. So this is understood and is sort of seen as natural and correct in our culture, whereas some Westerners may see a Muslim woman wearing hijab or niqab and see it as something backwards. So the veil, like many American women wear veils on their wedding day, and we see that as something normal and natural and appropriate and right, because, we've had sort of a context for it. We have a frame for it. In some Arab countries, women wear head coverings or even face coverings to show their devotion to God, and they choose to do so without coercion. You may see them, in fact, alongside women wearing bikinis, just like this scene from Tunisia. And again, on the beaches of Egypt. It should also be said that in some Arab or Muslim countries, women are forced to wear the hijab or to cover their hair to some degree. If Afghanistan is an example here where women are forced to cover using a burqa, which is pictured here. It's a much fuller covering. Here's another image of a woman doing something that you don't ordinarily think women who wear the hijab do. This woman is a sniper in the Syrian town of Aleppo. She's one of the Syrian rebels that you may have heard about on the news some years back. Also, Saudi Arabia has females in its military service. So on to, in contrast, we have the Video Music Awards. So, by the same token, a woman from Afghanistan may see these images of women performers wearing, and wonder why that they're wearing their underwear on television. They may have no proper cultural context to place this in. She may not know that the Video Music Awards are a place to push boundaries through clothing and sexuality, and that the Video Music Awards is a place to be edgy. A woman in Afghanistan may have no concept of what edgy means. We can also apply ethnocentrism and cultural relativism for food. We see eating chicken sandwiches and chicken nuggets as something that's normal, right, natural and correct. But if you really dig down deep into the way our food is produced, you might find that it's actually kind of strange, right? Modern chickens are produced and, they reach their full size in 47 days. The food that they're fed often contains things like caffeine and estrogen and other hormones. And, it's actually sort of weird if you look at it from a detached sort of perspective. You also may think, for example, that eating raw fish is something that is strange, right? You might never think about doing it. You might think it's gross, right? Because you may be more ethnocentric when it comes to raw fish, and that's okay. But you should know that for the Japanese, it's perfectly normal, natural, and right. And for an increasing number of Americans to eat things like sushi. I'll give you another example. In some parts of the world, China, Vietnam, it is still the case that people will eat dog meat. And this seems to us to be, disgusting, absurd. They're seen as companion animals, friends, or members of our families. Some people throw birthday parties for their dogs. Okay, so, they're not really seen as a food source. But so I'm going to show you two images. One of these is dog meat, and the other is beef. So can you tell which one is which? So actually, this one is dog meat, and this is beef. But if I told you the opposite, right, you probably would have some sort of repulsion, right? It's because ethnocentrism can make us feel that other cultures and practices and ideas are repulsing, even though it's sort of arbitrary. It's just because of the way we were raised that we don't see dogs as food, we see them as pets. Now, it should be said that cultural relativism does not necessarily imply moral relativism. For instance, you may think that eating dog meat or any meat is immoral. That's completely up to you. But if you're going to be studying societies, you need to apply what we call cultural relativism, which means understanding the culture based on its own terms. Abandon your biases so that you can truly understand the people that you are trying to understand. The goal of this lecture is to make the strange familiar and the familiar strange.